Hey, what's up, guys? With Pro Arena Talk, I am here with ArenaFan, AFL Fan Zone, and Shady Sports. We're going to talk about some AFL tonight. Get a roundtable. I know there's a bit of a controversial post, but we're going to get into the AFL and get back to the memories and reminisce and talk about the new league and preview the season that we have headed on. Scott, do you want to kick off and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so Scott Birk. So many of you know me as AFLSlasher. Been around the league since about 2006. Started with the Kansas City Brigade. Started running their fan club, and honestly, things just kind of took off from there. Been to every Arena Bowl since 2006, and I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe I've got the longest active streak of Arena Bowls out of anybody: owners, players, coaches, fans, anyone. So a little short resume there.
Arena fan. I don't think there's much introduction needed, but you go ahead, man.
Well, I'm Tim Capper. I've been with ArenaFan since 2000. I started off my podcasting career doing AFL Tonight back in 2001, and it transferred over until AFL Rewind that we're currently going to be doing this coming up season, and I've just been around forever. So, I mean, you guys know me as Repacked, obviously, over on social media or following us over on Twitter or whatnot. But yeah, Scott, I agree with you. I think you do the longest. I don't think I'm second longest, but I'm up there. I think it was like 6 or 7 in a row
before
2019. So it's but either way, it's I'm happy to be here, guys, and just happy to talk about the AFL and arena football in general.
Definitely. Sam, go ahead, man.
It's been a long time coming, man. I'm super excited to be here with you guys tonight. Super excited to talk some AFL. I know there's a lot of hesitancy around the league. I think that this panel of 4 people we've got here can shed some light on why we should believe in the league tonight. So I'm pretty excited to do that tonight.
Well, and Sammy, since we're simulcasting on all of our platforms, why don't you get in there too?
Yeah, so definitely. I started watching arena football when I was really young. When I was really young was whenever I do believe it was 2.0 was around. That was 2008, or that was 1.0 before they went bankrupt. With the Cleveland Gladiators, the Columbus Destroyers. I grew up around this area, Cleveland area, Akron area. So I fell in love with that before the relinquish of it. Then when it was back, I was really excited with, even though it's 4 teams in Albany and Philadelphia. And I think Tampa Bay was also in the rerun 2.0. It was still fun to have the sport back. And then I got back into it whenever I was on YouTube one night. And there's a Massachusetts, and I think it was Carolina. It was Carolina and Cobras and the Massachusetts Pirates playoff game. And I didn't even know the sport was still around. So I clicked on it, started watching it, and I fell in love with the sport all over again. And then last year motivated me to make a page, cover the news of the sport, and it's something I just love doing, journalism wise. And that's myself, Pro Arena Talk, and I'm with a couple other people, but that's what it is.
Absolutely.
So, speaking of memories, what was your of the older iterations? What was your guys' favorite memories of the teams, playoff games? I can tell you right now, one of them, my favorite was watching, I forget who the wide receiver was, running backwards for the Cleveland Gladiators, scoring a game-clinching touchdown, pushing them into, I believe, the Arena Bowl that year. Scott?
There's so many. I would say probably the one standout, at least play. I think from a personal standpoint, the people I've met along the way has been the main thing. But from the one standout play that comes to mind, was the Arena Bowl in Arizona with Aaron Garcia throwing the last second touchdown pass as time is expiring. The year he threw his 1000th touchdown earlier. I mean, it was just a perfect way to cap off that season. And honestly, that game was boring in the first half. The second half just all of a sudden lit up, and the ending was just absolutely phenomenal. But Arizona fans weren't happy, but man, it was a great game.
Yeah.
Now, I'll admit, I unfortunately was not able to make that one, Scott. That's one of the ones. That's one of my few regrets in life, is not making it out for that actual game itself. But for me itself, I mean, I know many fans. I know, Scott, you do this all the time when it comes to traveling. I mean, living in Montreal, having season ticket holders for the Toronto Phantoms for the 2 years that they were there, just traveling out there by train, just see the Phantoms play, and then coming back the same night. First ever time walking into Knickerbocker Arena in Albany. I'm sure all of you will remember what it's like for the very first time walking into an arena and just getting whatever feels you get when it came to seeing the setup, seeing, just the atmosphere itself, just me walking through that curtain. And if anybody who's been to MVP Arena in Albany knows what it's like to walk through these curtains and just it just opens up to you in the arena. And that's just one of the things that I remember the most, is because that first time there, all the Firebirds versus the Miami Hooters. That was my very first game. So it's just walking through there, seeing the net set up for the very first time, because, I understand that the league can push for television, and it's great to get, the exposure on TV. But we all know, all four of us know, and I'm sure, arena football fans across North America know, that you have to go to a game. You really have to just be there in person to see a game itself. So, and lastly, being at my first ever Arena Bowl as a non-media person is when I was there in '99. I remember after Albany clinched the semifinal win, literally getting in line. Not even know how I was going to get there, but getting in line to get tickets for Arena Bowl 13. So, and just being there, that was just so much fun.
Sam, I don't want to step on your toes and get yours in here, but you mentioned that moment and go walking into a certain building and just getting that feel, and immediately, I was just talking about this earlier this week with someone else. The Barnstormers did a scrimmage against Tulsa in the old barn right before they remodeled it and put a floor across it, and it was like a Wednesday night, and I'm like, well, I got 3 hours when I get off work to make it up, get up there. So, all right, got to get off work a little early. Drove as fast as I could up to Des Moines because I had to see the game played in that building. And I never got to go during the Kurt Warner days. I didn't get involved with it till well after that. So being able to see it in that building was great. Even if it wasn't a full game, even if it wasn't completely set up, it was just to be in that building was cool. So, sorry, Sam.
Oh, you're good. You're good. Honestly, I can't describe an exact moment, but mine is that feeling that Tim actually very aptly just described. I mean, the first time I walked into an arena football game, specifically an AFL game, I remember the atmosphere being almost overwhelming and in a good way. Like everybody was cheering their way into the game. We had arrived a little bit late, so the game had already kicked off and everybody was already, into it. And it was just a situation where at the time I was in high school, and it realistically changed my outlook on football forever. I've, quickly grown into more of a fan of indoor football than outdoor football because of that. You just can't really duplicate that atmosphere even outdoors as much as I would like to say you could. So it was that feeling when I first walked into an AFL game that really made me a fan of alternative football in general. And now here we are almost 20 years later.
And I'm still, personally, I haven't went to an AFL game yet. I'm still waiting, or arena football game yet. I've had my chances. My only chance was when I was in middle school, and the Pittsburgh Power over here. With Tom, I believe Tom Grady was a quarterback here, and it was a rivalry. At that time, though, I couldn't convince my parents. I was like, maybe 13, 14. I was still loving it, but I couldn't convince my parents, unfortunately. So, it's that. Do you guys have any favorite specific teams through the past AFL iterations? Any bias, or not bias, but any, that's
I think we're all biased.
Go ahead, Scott.
I say for me, I've got my local teams. I got involved because Kansas City got a team. So I've been, always supported the two franchise we had there. In between, I started going to Barnstormers games. That's become a whole thing we don't need to get into. But, had a great time there. Some great people up there. Now, I'm on top of doing the fan zone. I run the Guerrilla Tactics Coaches Show, and I'm totally drawing a blank on my group name, but also run the fan group for the Rampage. So Coach Henderson, I've known him from his time in Kansas City when he played indoor ball, and he kind of drugged me into this. Now he's gone, but I'm already neck deep. So this is where I'm going to be this year. So.
If we're talking current teams, I don't really have one dog in the fight. There's a lot of teams I root for based on people who are coaching there or running a team, or just based on a vibe that I've gotten from the team members that I've met. So, I'm a big fan of Southwest Kansas. I'm a big fan of Billings, big fan of Albany, always going to be a fan of Damon Ware wherever he goes. So a big fan of all three of those franchises. Shout out to Orlando as well. They've done a great job building their roster so far this season. But in terms of the old league, one team that we didn't get this season that I was really hoping would turn up is the Colorado Crush. I'm a Colorado born and raised, so was kind of hoping we got another team here. Maybe 2025 is our year, hopefully.
Be great to have them back, that's for sure.
For me, it's funny being where I'm located. Everybody tries to find their own home team, so to speak. It's funny. Albany, for me, is always going to be my home team, or my home team, considering that they're not really a local team for me. They're 4 hours away. So, and being with ArenaFan, I try to be as impartial as possible, even though just a little, I'm sitting up there in press row, just kind of like, yeah, they're doing it. You can't really scream in press row, as I've learned a long time ago, by the way. That's a story for another day. But I'm just interested to see what's happening. I'm glad when it comes to this year. I'm glad to see Albany is back. I'm curious to see what happens with the rest of the league, because legacy cities, you have some legacy indoor cities, so it's going to be fun no matter what. But it's, for me, it's always going to be Albany no matter what. But it's, again, I try to stay as impartial as possible, but it's always going to be the Birds for me.
Yeah, I guess the current iteration, if I had to pick a team, it would be the Philly Soul. There's some kids that went to high school around this area that I knew, so that signed with it. Lamont Wade, he phenomenal football player, and he's gonna make the Soul a sneaky good team. But on the previous iteration, I was always a Columbus Destroyer fan, and it was beautiful that they came back in 2018. But watching them, I think they only won one game that year, and the only bright spot was having Fabian Guerrera as a kick return receiver, do it basically like a Joshua Cribbs of the old Browns. Other than that, I mean, I really have been. It's like watching a league with no really ties in it, because outside of Columbus, it's not really nothing for me to go for. On next one, I think we're going to preview the teams currently in the league. Who do you guys have going to the playoff, possibly win the division and making a serious run for this year's Arena Bowl? Way too early because we don't have all the rosters yet, but who do you guys have making it playoffs and making a deep run, Scott?
Of course, I'm going to sound biased given what all I just said, but honestly, for the Central, I really honestly do like Iowa. And strictly because the rest of the teams that are in their division are coming from an indoor football background. So they're going to, I would imagine, come in with more of an indoor football mindset when it comes to playing these games. And with a short season, it doesn't give them a lot of time to adjust. So coming in with AFL quarterback or AFL coaches primarily in the background, it sounds like most of the coaches are going to stay there. Having AFL-minded coaches, I think it gives them a major advantage in the Central. Other than that, I mean, the East is looking solid. I mean, absolutely stacked. The South is looking incredible. I mean, I have to give the nod to Orlando and Albany currently, just again, coming pre-made, having some background. The West is up in the air. I mean, I would lean towards Billings, and again, that's kind of AFL coaches on the staff. But that AFL West is kind of just completely up in the air for me.
Well, you know how sometimes guys they say it's sometimes sometimes you need a program to tell who the players are. Or I think for at least more for me, not really for you, Scott, because I know you have an indoor background. Same thing with you, Sam, and same thing with you, Sammy. For me, it's like starting brand new this year because back in 2019, I knew most of the players, I knew most of the coaches, et cetera, et cetera. This is gonna be brand new for me, completely brand new. So looking at all these rosters and all the guys that they've released so far, the names of who are on their roster, I've actually pushed, and I think I've said this to you, Scott, and I think I've said it on social media, is it to me, any of the teams that have at least an AFL pedigree when it comes to either head coach or coaching staff, to me, those are going to be the ones that are going to have I think the best chance at moving on and getting through this 10-week sprint into the playoffs up to Arena Bowl. You look at Billings as an example. I mean, who would have thought Sid Bonner would come out of retirement? I don't think anybody saw Sid Bonner coming out of retirement
and to go to Billings.
And to be a coach again. I mean, last time he coached was for the Chicago Rush, if I'm not mistaken. Wasn't it that Scott? Chicago Rush, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, and that was a good while ago.
So, that, and it just, so it's, for me, again, I'm going to need a program for all these new teams. I have so many things I have to learn again, but I think for me, again, as I said, it's going to be the teams that I think that have the most AFL experience on their coaching staff. I know some do have a lot of former arena, indoor football and arena league experience. I mean, look at Albany. I mean, when you got Darius Prince, how he's not been picked up, by the way, for, in another league, whether it be one of the outdoor leagues or another indoor league. I mean, it's crazy.
Incredible.
Yeah. I mean, so I'm going to wait. I'm waiting to see what all the rosters are supposed to be like. And then I'll give my picks. But for me right now, I'm leaning basically when it comes to the coaching staff.
And the thing is you look at the players like, there's all these old AFL players out there. Yeah, there really aren't. Because there weren't that many teams, when the league ended, and it's been 5 years. These guys are starting to get older. They don't have the gas in the tank like they did, and then there weren't that many rookies. If you look back at that last season, There weren't a lot of young guys out there, and the few that are other places. The Fabians, again, how Prince is not picked up by the CFL or UFL is beyond me, but there's not a lot of guys out there from the old AFL that either want to play or even still can play.
I think that's really what it boils down to, that we don't see a lot more AFL names at this point. I mean, we talk about the fact that this is going to be like, 5 seasons now removed from when they folded last time. I mean, most of these guys are beyond their prime at that point, except for Darius Prince and guys like that who were younger when it folded. It's going to be really interesting to see this season, but I think Billings has a strong shot. Albany has a great roster. I think West Texas has done a lot of good things as well. I like what Southwest Kansas is doing. Obviously, I'm a UFL fan, so they've got a couple UFL names that I noticed on there. I like what Iowa has done, despite the fact that I often give Krish a hard time about what Iowa has done, that they've made a lot of good moves. So I like a lot of these rosters, but yeah, I definitely lean toward the coaching staffs that have more AFL experience, specifically with arena rules football, because as far as we know, that's what it's going to be, the classic AFL rules. So if that's the case, then you want to be prepared for that.
Hopefully, we do find out tomorrow what the coaching situation's like in Iowa. Hoping to find out tomorrow night. So, not sure if that's what the announcement is, but they are making some announcements tomorrow night. So,
how about some kickoff times? I want to know kickoff. I want to know kickoff times.
I'm more concerned about the Sunday kickoff times. I want to know that if I can make it back from Dodge City after that on a Sunday game, because that's rough. That's a rough drive right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think I'd have to lean with you guys with the coaching. Another thing is the talent. There's a lot of talent in the East and with Albany. It's really going to be a toss-up, I think, with Orlando down in the southern region. And I believe, I forget the second team, but it's going to be a toss-up in the southern region. You got Orlando, you got West Texas, who's going to be a really good team. I think they're going to be I think between Orlando, West Texas, and Albany, that you could have your champion right there. The East and South, in my opinion, though, are just going to be really stacked and really hard to win. I think it's going to be the champion between one of those two divisions, really. I'm interested to see how the A7FL and how their affiliation will work this year. If it's going to be like a developmental league, how they're going to utilize the A7FL for development, and what teams are going to be using it, like whether it's going to be Washington or Oregon maybe that could use those players. We'll have to see. Any final thoughts as far as that goes, you guys?
Oh, you actually brought up a very good point too, Sammy, because you're talking about West Texas. Is that West Texas, out of all the current teams in the AFL until we find out what's happening in Iowa, obviously, for the head coaches, there are only 2 current head coaches that have any AFL experience as far as head coaching wise. And that's Dean Kokinos in Georgia. Excuse me, in Nashville.
Yeah.
I was thinking Georgia's before. And then Chris Siegfried in West Texas. So there's a lot of new blood, and that's a question I wanted to ask you guys about. Are you surprised that when it came to head coaches, that there are not more head coaches who have had AFL experience? Because as we know, the difference between the old CIF game and the indoor football league game, it's a completely different game than the AFL.
And even the NAL wasn't 100% translated. So
I think you really, I don't know what the financials are for all that. So I don't know how competitive the IFL is, which I know IFL has a lot of former AFL coaching wise. So I don't know the financials are, so I couldn't comment on it and what it'd be.
Oh, I just meant in general, though, when it came to, are you surprised that there aren't more AFL coaches currently in the league? I mean, as I said, they actually may be in a current contract, like Coach Moss is over Northern Arizona. There's a good example, or Rob Keefe. There are 2 very well-known names from the AFL that are currently in a situation where maybe they don't want to get out of their job currently, or they can't get out of their job currently as I said,
Bilzell's got his coaching in his alma mater now, and to not see Mike Hohensee come up, to not see Ron James come up.
Ron James, there's a surprise to me too.
It is very surprising not see guys like that pop up, because they're just staples. Now the flip side of that is there's a couple of younger guys coaching these teams. I love the fact that there's a youth movement in this league, that we're bringing in not only younger coaches, but younger front office people, completely different mindset than we've ever seen before. I like that there's a whole different way of thinking just across the board in this league. So part of me's not upset that the old guard's not in, but kind of surprised at the same time.
No, and it's just popped up on the screen. It's a very good point too. Is that for of the current head coaches, you have 6 of them who were former players, so they do have the experience.
And I think that's going to be the key with this rebirth, is that just the experience of knowing the game, being able to teach the game as they played it. Because a lot of those guys, didn't actually play arena ball. Hohensee being an exception to that. But a lot of those guys didn't play around. Even the game that Hohensee played is not the same game that we ended up with the last incarnation of it. So it's, I don't know. I like the youth movement. Just overall, I like the youth movement.
I would agree on that front as well. I am a little surprised that we don't see Rob Keefe on one of these rosters. I am a little surprised we didn't see Les Moss, although Moss did comment on that in a recent interview I did with him. He said that he was not leaving NAS, at least until they tell him he has to. So he seemed very happy there. So I think that's kind of a situation where he didn't even entertain other offers if they even came. He didn't even really comment on it, to be quite honest. But there are some other names out there that were very surprising. I even actually asked Rob Keefe if he had any interest. He never commented on it, but I have to feel like a couple teams had to have reached out to him in particular, especially after the run he just had with Bay Area this past season.
I can tell you guys that there was a former AFL head coach who was one of the finalists in Nashville. So it went down between him and Dean Kokinos, and I'll leave it at that.
Well, they're looking the right direction. You got to give them that credit for that.
Yeah.
The other thing is, they had that Arizona team that didn't materialize this year, and I don't know that it was ever officially stated, but in the photos and stuff they posted, Darren Arbette was prominently featured in some of their posts. So I imagine he was probably on the, very, very, very short list for that particular franchise had that happened.
Yeah, it sounded like it was a pretty much foregone conclusion, which, I mean, how can you argue with that?
You don't.
Exactly. I mean, man, talk about a good coaching staff. We had a couple questions roll in that I highlighted here. One in particular from Zero Productions. Maybe some of you guys can highlight or answer some of these questions he's got. What have you guys heard concerning the pay structure the AFL has for players, housing, food, etc.? Is the AFL paying for that, or are the individual teams?
Yes. That's pretty much what I've heard. I think the league is helping out where they can. I've heard, and I haven't confirmed this, but the AFL is helping with flights if teams need to fly somewhere. Housing, food, it's going to be just like it's pretty much is in all the leagues, is taken care of. To what level, I think that's pretty much going to be handled by the teams. Hopefully handled well. We've definitely seen the share of franchises that don't do that. But yeah, I mean, general food, housing, it's going to be pretty similar to what it was before, it sounds like.
Yeah, which is exactly on point with what I've heard. Teams are responsible for pay, housing, food. Maybe Tim, you can elaborate on some of that as well.
The only thing I mean, there's no secret that it is a minimum $1,000 a game and up to a minimum of $200,000 that has to be spent on a team roster every year. So it depends on what they're going to sign these players for. I mean, I don't think it'll ever come out if some of these guys are making more than the minimum of $1,000. I mean, unless somebody is willing to show what their contract is, but
it can, because the limit's 700,000.
Oh yeah.
So if there's no reason to put things under the table.
Oh no, that's not what I meant. Is that because when you've heard, like Coach Ware in Albany has basically said that they're not. He's basically paying everybody the minimum. DP is not playing for the minimum. I'm sorry, DP. If you want to chime in on this, I don't think you're getting paid the minimum, dude. I'm sorry, unless you have part ownership. But it's whatever these. As long as these team owners do not get into a financial situation where they've overpriced their players just to sign a name. I've heard rumblings that teams have to put an X amount into potentially escrow just in case if they cannot pay the rosters. It's kind of getting away from the model there. If everybody remembers how the AFL, if a team was in financial straits, all the other teams, no matter how many there were in the league, were responsible for paying, the fees, et cetera, in the roster, for the players and stuff like that. So supposedly that's not the case now because they've actually put into place. And I know that there have been many questions when it comes to ownership and stuff like that. So it's, if that is the case, if they have to put an X amount aside, that bodes well. But as I said, it's more information may come out, but we'll see.
And it's maybe some of the coaches I noticed there's a couple of coaches in chat.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe they can, I don't know if they can confirm this or not, but I did hear that potentially and maybe it's for certain teams, but the league is subsidizing some of that $1,000 for. So again, I don't want to put anything on the record, say it's definitely happening, but I've heard something along those lines that the league is assisting with some of the pay. So.
Where did Damon Ware say that he's only paying guys the minimum?
On one of their coaches' shows. Somebody asked the question.
Well, and Philly's doing the same thing.
Yeah, Coach Fimmel, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. I don't know how much I actually believe that about Albany. They've gotten some pretty solid guys, and I'm like, I don't know. I mean, regardless.
It could be subsidized because remember the last year the AFL, they did have, I think, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was $25,000 that was set aside for community service or doing other things within you could put all 25. Sorry, it's 25,000. All 25,000 to one player, or break it up amongst other players. So maybe they have something like that this year. I don't know, but maybe that's the case. Same thing with the case with Albany. If DP, as an example, is not getting paid at more than $1,000 a game.
Well, and again, there's nothing wrong with getting paid more than $1,000 a game. I mean, that's the beauty of how they have this set up. It's that, you know what, if somebody wants to drop $700,000 on their roster, knock yourself out.
Yeah, that's actually
that's
what
not
I
going
like
to happen.
about this league. I personally like that there is a very clear cut. If you can afford to pay these players, go right ahead, field the best possible roster you can. Because not only is that good for players, because then that creates a true free market system for them to negotiate their wages for another team. But at the same time, it provides a scenario where we could get some larger names in this league that we maybe aren't expecting. And I mean, there's some teams that haven't announced a lot so far. So
there are a lot of teams though. And I know some of the names from the IFL, but there have been a ton of names coming over to the AFL and that have been signed to contracts currently.
True.
And
Very
some
true.
of them are very well-known names.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, hey, for them to come over at $1,000 minimum,
look at the IFL minimum though. You're talking a $200 minimum in the IFL.
Fair.
You're talking five, without a win bonus, you're talking 5 times that for one game.
Sammy, you being basically from indoor football and stuff, what are your thoughts when it comes to the pay structure? And as I said, I know that you and I have talked back and forth. I know we're not necessarily trying to convince you to watch the AFL or to like the AFL. It's just trying to convince you that the AFL is a pretty decent business model or a good model for the players itself. When you hear this type of stuff when it comes to players and the amounts paying that we're paying them, what are your thoughts on that?
So my first thought would be, for some of these programs, where did this money come from before? Because some of these teams were not around just this year. They, like West Texas, and the CIF teams. We seen them last year, and they have a lot more of a competitive roster this year. So obviously, not obviously, but there's going to be financial aid in that. And that's where I kind of figure talent-wise and team-wise, I have no issue with the AFL. The AFL is going to be one of the more competitive arena leagues this year. I think it's going to be competing with the IFL, and the NAL and AIF are going to have to catch up talent-wise, but they're going to be in the mix. My whole issue with the AFL is what's the sustainability of the league long term, not just team-wise, but league-wise. I mean, what's the corporate sponsorships? How are they going to be able to not just fund these teams, but they're also wanting to give them all new jerseys? I'm assuming they're eventually going to want to give them all new fields because some of them have been using old AFL fields. So to look pretty for national TV audiences, they're going to want to present it to be like a high-end product and want to redo these fields. So when I see all this money being spent, my biggest question as far as the AFL is when are they going to get the money back? Are they going to get back through the sponsorships of the teams, the money that the teams have, not have been making? They've been making money, but not at the structure of what the AFL would going to have to catch up on. So that's my biggest question with the league.
Sammy, maybe you can answer this question. I don't know that there is an actual true minimum. I think it technically is $250 is the max. Is the salary cap? Am I correct in that?
I don't know off the top of my head what the max of the IFL is. If there's a loss,
do not quote me on this. I could be incorrect. Pimmel, you're in the comments. You'd know better than I would. I believe it's $250 per game for any player. What they go above me on is, the kind of over the table or under the table type situation, or for community service situations as well. So.
Even the CIF had a higher
Here's
max than that.
$225, he says.
Even the CIF had a higher max than that. So it kind of blows me away that.
Minimum. Is there a max, Pimmel? You'd be able to answer that better than I would.
Maybe the same type of thing that they currently have with the AFL. Yeah.
But and I like that because we have this $700,000 cap that no one's going to come close to. I mean, that's just the reality of it. But because of that, you don't have to have guys hiding what they make. You don't have to have guys hiding that, oh yeah, I'm got this on the side, but I can't say where I got it from, or it gets rid of some of that icky stuff that goes on. It went on to the old AFL. It's gone on in all these other leagues. We all know players who got paid way more than what the league allowed, and just don't have to worry about that. If you want to pay them $100,000, go for it.
But just make sure you have the means.
Yeah, that's exactly.
This isn't the days of six-figure salaries. From what was it, 2008-ish? 8-ish, yeah. You guys making? I mean, Graziani had a close to $1 million contract.
So, Sammy, to answer your question though about the sponsors, if you want to make money in this league, it's not about tickets sold. It's about sponsorship dollars. Tickets should be your profit, should be your gravy. Now that goes hand in hand. You got to have the people to get the sponsors. It's kind of a double-edged sword. From what I've heard, and I don't know who all of these sponsors are. They've got multiple major sponsors, and sounds like almost all of them are locked into a 3-year deal. So, it is what it is. I mean, things could still fall apart. There's always ways to back out. But for now, it sounds like they've got some pretty solid. Like any one of these 3, 4, 5 that they've got would be bigger than anyone that any of the other leagues have. It's that level sponsorship.
Yeah, I mean the AFL as a brand, it's not a arena league, and I hold the AFL to a high standard. Mm-hmm. The reason why is because it's not a arena league; it's the arena league.
They call it the arena league.
Yeah. But they're held to a standard. The casual fan knows the league. You don't have to introduce them to them. Most football fans know of a AFL team, whether it's through Kurt Warner, not Fred Jackson, but through multiple outlets that they know an AFL team. It's most likely. So that's what frustrates me is whenever I'm hearing all this money spent and there's no income. So behind closed doors, it sounds like there's income, but we don't know it. And what they've said to us publicly so far has not fallen through. For example, we didn't know that Arizona wasn't going to get a team until after they announced the schedule. I mean, they had Arizona Bandits make a post and hyped up the schedule, and they didn't get a team. So I don't know if
it's the same thing with Chicago.
You're saying, yeah. So I don't know what's smoke and mirrors, what's waiting to be announced. But I mean, as far as trust wise, and this is the next topic, I have no faith in what is the new like the league itself. The teams I have no problem with. I'm going to be excited to watch the teams, but the league itself and their announcements, I don't know if it's Hutton on his own going off of off script and trying to hype up the league more, but the league doesn't need hyped up more. I mean, everyone's excited about the AFL. You could just say it's coming back and everyone's going to be excited. Here's the teams. So that's my biggest concern with this AFL.
Is it a matter of you're not liking how they've done the announcements things? I know that there have been a lot of questions when it came to, the New York City announcement and how that was done. Even myself, I was questioning a few things, but overall though, Sammy, when it comes to the announcements and how the league has done it, I at first I wasn't on board with it, but it kind of makes sense. It kind of makes sense now because, Scott and I have gone through versions of the Arena Football League where everything has basically been set up front. And I will use the relaunch in 2010 as an example, where everything was done on a conference call. All 16 teams were dropped right there and then. It still left a lot of questions. This current version of the AFL, when it comes to Travell Gaines and to Lee Hutton, is they're keeping the league in the news cycle, positive or negative. They're keeping it in the news cycle, and this isn't, again, for when the league relaunched in 2010. You guys, you got to admit, social media was not what it is today. It's a well-known thing that, I mean, you guys remember how you had the little blurbs on, I think they still do it now on USA Today, just a little blurb of a story. And it's like how people go these days when it comes to social media. They just read the first paragraph and base it off of that. I think they're trying to make sure that, yes, you may read that little bit there, but it's hopefully making you want more. Whether it makes you mad or not that they're not letting you know right away is, to me, is on purpose. And again, at first I was not 100% on board, but now seeing it and just going back and looking at it now, it makes a ton of sense. Have there been missteps? Sure there have. Nothing. It was not a perfect launch back in New York City for sure. But yes, and we still have questions now, right? But I mean, I think Scott's heard. I'm sure I've heard. There are things coming. It's just a matter of the television contract. Unfortunately, the league is waiting for and I know this is going to be one of the topics tonight too. But when the television network wants to make the announcement, that's
I can 100% confirm what he just said as well. That's exactly what I've heard.
I can also use it. And I tried to do my research for tonight because everybody knows me. I try to get when it comes to historical stuff. Think about this. Back in 2010, when the league came back, I think they announced the teams, and then at a certain point they announced that they had all the correct schedules. I get that. They were finalized schedules. They did not announce the NFL Network contract until a month before kickoff.
I'll even take you a step from that. The whole league changed names.
That too.
The league was announced as Arena Football 1. And then when the NFL Network got involved, they said, no, we want you to go back to your old name. And so they changed the whole league's name a month before the season kicked off.
So we're all chomping at the bit, wanting to know who the television providers are going to be, the online providers are going to be for streaming and for watching the games. When again, you go back to 2010, it was a month prior. So
I want to kind of key in a little bit though more with what Sammy's talking about. They did say Chicago. They said the first game is going to be played in Chicago. There was the Arizona team, which was semi-announced, not really. It kind of broke on its own.
I think they even gave them a home, right? They announced a location for Arizona, didn't they? It must have been a rim.
Not officially.
Yeah,
not officially. They were looking at Glendale, then they were looking at a couple other places, but they never, I think, officially said this is where we're going. But the original announcement had 16 teams, and not a whole lot of those 16 are we see today. So I mean, I get that. We expected an Ohio team, that didn't happen. Chicago didn't happen. No one knew about Arizona, but when we found out about Arizona, then it didn't happen. Denver didn't happen. So I mean, there's been some missteps. There's been some disappointments. The commissioners addressed some of it, whether it's been interference, whether they didn't get the job done. He hasn't said that in particular, but I'm sure that probably plays into it at some point. But it sounds like the interference that they've received has been a lot. It's been heavy, and it's been difficult. It was way more difficult. And actually, I asked the commissioner. I asked him if he could change anything. From how it has been launched up until now. He said he would have had more time. He would have taken more time to do some of this stuff. And some of this was rushed.
So, and I do want to go back to one thing, because I remember the day after I found out, and then I think ArenaFan, you had a show not too long after with Lee Hutton, and one thing that was said that was really stuck with me, and that's why I've held him to this, is that he waits to say anything until the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, and that's the standard I'm holding him to, because he put that out there. No one else told him to do that, so he put it out there. And we've had these missteps where I guess the T's weren't fully crossed and the I's were not dotted, and we've had teams pull out. Arizona, he confirmed Jackson. He didn't confirm Jacksonville, but he teased Jacksonville and Arizona on that podcast that day, which I know a lot turned off a lot of fans. But whenever they announced the cities, Jacksonville wasn't there, so I could get over that. But whenever half of your teams that you confirmed that are going to have a team next year are not on the roster for this year, and 5 of the 16 teams that you have were CIF teams that I'm not sure whenever they confirmed. I mean, I don't think it was confirmed. Maybe it was confirmed midway through last year and the season, but I don't think it was confirmed that early. So that means that he had at most 11 teams whenever they supposedly had 16 ownership groups in 16 different locations. That's one thing I do not like. So, I mean, that's 2 times at least that we've been misled. As far as TV contracts go, have any of you guys watched the British Basketball League? Any of y'all? So that's one of the shows on Prime, Amazon Prime. They have. So as far as Amazon Prime goes, I believe they're going to lock that up and it's going to be on there. My biggest question would be the NFL Network, because with NFL Network now they would have to take away someone's time slots or push back a time slot, whether it's a rerun of a game, because this is during the off season, or NFL Total Access of a draft or whatever. They're going to have to push back a time slot and put in a AFL game. So that is what I have most questions of, and I at this point I still feel like I have to question it because we've been misled about other things that they have on paper, they put on paper, and didn't follow through.
I'll tell you this: if it's anything, it's the other way around.
Yeah,
I think the NFL Network's on lock. In my opinion, NFL Network's on lock. I'm not completely sold on Amazon yet. I think that's why we've seen some of the schedule changes we've seen. Is because
I heard another one pop up too, which totally came out, which I had to look up because I didn't even know it existed. It was Max Sports. It's like, really?
That's been gotten big lately. There was even a point in time, from what I understand, they were flirting with Peacock.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't.
Why not?
I don't think it played out, but
I don't know. I'm not sure the big obstacle it is because they are streaming services. It's not like a streaming service has to push back anybody or like tell someone that they can't run, because they can run simultaneously 2 different games. They have a whole network. Technically, they have like a whole live TV guide on Amazon Prime. So I'm not sure,
But it's not just getting the games out there; it's the production level.
Yeah,
and that's also what's
behind the pushing back a game or what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it makes sense too, because I think if anything that these aren't going to be the days of NBC where you had all the games at once on a Sunday afternoon, or you had or the occasional doubleheader, which we all loved, whether they were regional doubleheaders or not. But my opinion is this: is that no matter which network is going to be that's going to have the games, okay. You want to be able to bring in a caliber, as an example, of an Ari Wolf who knows arena football, who's been around arena football since the Albany Firebird days. He started off in Albany as their play-by-play guy, went on to Philadelphia and became, got a name himself with the NFL Network as an example. So I think they want to, as Scott said, I think they want to put on the best production possible. Obviously we always talk about, when it comes to being on national television, is there any monetary value going to be going towards the league? Usually not. This is not going to, I do not see this being an example like CBS Sports Network currently paying the Canadian Football League $1 million a year for rights. That's the first, and when you're a niche sport, you're not going to get money from a network. If there is something behind it, hey, I'm happy with it. I'll be happy with it, till the cows come home. But I don't see it happening. But making sure that all the production is perfect. So once a week, I think would be. It's smart.
These guys have different connections than we're used to as well.
Yeah, true. 100%.
They've got very, very deep connections in organizations that we don't even realize, because we don't know much about the current league ownership and the guys running it. But I know they're very well connected, and if they know the right people in the right network, there's things that can happen. But with the reason I still think the NFL Network's going to kind of be on lock is the NFL Network pays guys year round to call games and things, and if there's no games to call, they're just sitting around waiting. And they're just going to replay old, things that people seen a million times. Where keep these guys busy, keep their skills up for calling games, Try out some new announcers that you maybe have waiting in the wings. I think it's a good testing ground for the NFL Network specifically to use our games for. So, and then you go to like Amazon, you go to some of those other, yeah, they have staffs, but I don't necessarily know if they have the staff they need to do this yet. So
it's like what Amazon did with the NFL. They hired very well-known NFL, broadcasters. So, I mean, which route would you go, Sammy, when it came to television? And I understand your reasoning for being apprehensive. I get that. To me, I wouldn't, with them making the modifications as Scott was mentioning to the schedule, and can you? I mean, for them to change as many games they did for Orlando recently, I mean, they changed 4 games for Orlando. So it looks like they're setting everything up, because I remember correctly, Scott, and correct me if I'm wrong, when CBS Sports Network was doing the games, they loved going to Tampa. They loved going to Tampa, and that's why quite a few games were out of Tampa. So maybe that's what they're going to be doing when it comes to Orlando for some of these games. I don't know.
Showcase certain markets.
And here's another thing too. I think Coach Ware mentioned a couple of weeks ago. He said, was it Coach Ware? Or was it on one of the most recent ones where Albany is supposed to be on national television 9 times next year, this season?
Can we just backtrack just a step? You said Orlando is going to get a lot of games on TV, right?
Orlando changed 4 of 5 home games recently, so that they fell in line to the days where we're expecting the national television broadcasts to be. Okay,
and then Albany as well. What are those two?
Albany mentioned it was 9 games on national TV. What that means, though, doesn't it mean it would be, if it is NFL Network, doesn't mean it's going to be just NFL Network. So
absolutely not.
Maybe that gives a little bit more,
or is it multiple nights?
Yeah. Or depending on where Orlando is, could it be a doubleheader?
Absolutely.
I mean,
you got all kinds of options.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is notice what those two markets have going for them. They're larger markets. They're markets that are built for TV. So that makes a lot of sense.
They're legacy markets too.
Exactly.
But I don't want to slight the indoor legacy, because I know there are a ton of teams that have indoor legacies. I mean,
but we also know that they're going to draw a certain level of crowds.
Yeah.
Pretty well guaranteed.
Exactly. Yeah. And then we know that that's definitely going to be a factor that people are talking about. I mean, obviously we heard that all year long with the USFL. So, if these games don't look right on TV, that's going to be a factor as well for the sustained success of this league. So, I mean, that's definitely something I feel they're taking into account. So it wouldn't surprise me if, we see a lot of those bigger markets on TV when we have the TV games.
So USFL, it's interesting you bring that up, because I mean, they specifically had no one in their stands other than especially that first year, other than in the Birmingham home games.
Yep.
There was no one in those stands.
Exactly.
But they did well.
Play Birmingham though, so.
But they did well on those on the ratings.
No.
So it's again, yes, you need people in the seats to get the sponsors, but the sponsors are the ones that actually pay the bills. It kind of keeps going back to that. So, and if you get enough attention and you put out a good enough product, the people will come. Especially if you have solid ownership. Ownership, I've always said there's no such thing as a bad market, only bad owners. I truly believe any market could work as long as you got the right people involved, putting the right kind of money and effort into it.
I would agree.
I think there's good ownerships in the AFL, as far as that goes.
I mean, have we been able to convince you at all, Sammy, when it comes to the
I mean, my biggest
TV
question
thing
is Albany saying this. My question would be to Albany, and if I was there, who's telling you this? Is it the AFL telling you this? And that's who I don't trust is the Hutton and Rossi for that level. I trust the teams. I believe that they're reporting what's given to them. As far as what goes there. You guys said production and the presentation, the presentation of the game. So that means they're going to have to get all new fields. All these CIF teams are going to have to get new fields customized for their own team, not just
unless they're not playing televised games there.
There you go.
Or not
That's what I was trying to point out.
Not national televised games.
Yeah, then you're only showcasing half your quarter of your league, I would assume, right?
You're showcasing their venues, not necessarily showcasing them. You can still see Dodge City, Salina. You can still see them on national TV, but they're going to be in Orlando. They're going to be in so you're not going to showcase the venue, but you still showcase the teams.
Exactly. It's going to be a quarter of the teams mostly at their home though, at Orlando, Albany. I'm assuming Nashville's going to have a nice field. I haven't seen any photos from them yet as far as their field goes, but from their ownership group, it looks like it's going to be a really nice team out there and nice field.
Salina has Philly's old field, so they've got a quality field. They just need to change the center logo in the end zone.
Yeah.
So that's a easy fix.
Yeah, and Salina's going to be a good team. I believe they signed the CIF Defensive Player of the Year out there. So, I mean, I'm mostly concerned about the AFL themselves. I do trust these teams. I do trust the teams themselves to put a good quality product on the field. And that's my biggest turnoff is them announcing stuff before it's fully into fruition. So like you guys said, NFL Network still hasn't been confirmed yet by the NFL Network. But my question would be back to Hutton. Why say anything if it's not confirmed? Why even put it out there? Because now whenever the NFL Network doesn't fall through or Amazon Prime doesn't fall through, now it looks worse on them. So
and the commissioner did address some of this, specifically in Georgia. They announced Georgia, and then all of a sudden Georgia went radio silent. We asked him about that a couple weeks ago, and he said they had an ownership. It was in. They were sold. And then some of that interference that has been mentioned a couple of times that their ownership got reached out to and got convinced to drop after they were already signed. So they had to find new ownership for Georgia. They since have found some. They haven't announced it yet. It's coming soon, supposedly. But I think that's what happened in a lot of these markets too, is they had things set. They had things in place and in pencil agreements done. And then someone came along and called up the arena and said, hey, these guys are lying to you. They've got no money, or, well, we're interested in putting a team there too. So don't book any dates yet because, we want to put a team there. Some basically these unfair business practices that had happened. And so a lot of these places that they did announce, they couldn't. The other thing too, I have a theory, and this is just strictly my theory.
And by the way, Scott, that could have easily have led to why, when it came to the initial markets that were announced by the league, not all those markets ended up having a team in 2024.
Yep.
Right.
100%.
Well, and I've got a theory too that Chicago and Arizona could have played this year, but they wanted to keep the divisions equal, keep everything equal.
Yeah, I heard that too.
I actually hadn't heard that. It's just kind of a theory I came up with.
No, I heard that. I heard that too. I'd heard that too.
So when one fell out, it was either 1 or 4. It's kind of what it came down to. So,
couple things. One, Chicago, I've spoken to their ownership group. They specifically said they just didn't feel like they were 100% ready to field a team in 2024. And he said, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it the correct way and make sure it's successful the first time. He's like, I only get one shot at this. I want to make sure I'm doing it right. So a lot of respect for the way he's approaching it. He would rather not do it than do it the wrong way. And one thing Zach is leaning in on here real quick on that interference. Arizona was definitely an interference issue. What better indication of interference do you need than the rumors that Arizona, the AFL team, was going in at Glendale, and then all of a sudden the Rattlers are moving arenas to Glendale. Just saying. I mean, that's one of those situations where you don't really have to think very hard to see the interference in that situation. I mean,
and it wouldn't be the first time Arizona's pulled something like that.
By the way, this is breaking news. Nobody has to worry about going to theafl.com anymore. Because it doesn't exist. I just checked. I was looking for some information and it doesn't exist anymore. So the only site for the league that exists now is arenafootballusa.com.
Hey, there you go. Maybe they're hearing some of these complaints that we have, because that is definitely one, in my opinion, valid complaint, is the lack of consistency on social media and with the overall promotion of the league in some situations.
Well, the A7 was the A7FL. Is that what it is? A7FL. Their presser put the old website, and I reached out to the league and I said, guys, they put the wrong website, and he said, whoever answered me back said they'll take care of it. So
there you go.
There is one more thing now. Sam reminded me of it. The social media, Twitter specifically of the AFL has been hit or miss. They have done some I don't know if you guys have kept up with their Twitter at all. I get messages about it, so that's how I even know.
Same.
They've liked some questionable tweets critiquing the page, critiquing how the Twitter has been posting, and it's such a weirdly managed account. I think I could go if it was just a weirdly managed account and there was nothing about the league. That's how much I don't care. But I mean, to add that in to just the rest of the snowball that the AFL has had, that's definitely just more negative news than good. And it's something so small that it could easily be fixed by someone just paying attention. Don't like a tweet that's critiquing how you're running the account. That's weird.
So I will say there, and I've seen this done. I even saw this done with the old AFL. Tom Goodhines, good friend of ours, used to run the AFL account as well as his own personal Twitter account. And all of a sudden, one day, pops up picture on the AFL account with him and his buddies out at the pool. It's real easy to like something thinking you're on the wrong account.
Scott, don't you remember the infamous thing that happened with Orlando?
That
was very bad. That was very bad. Speaking of, I'll admit, I've done the same thing. I've done the same thing because I have so many different Twitter accounts too. I've done the same thing, but it's. I think they're getting better. We don't know if Humble's running it. We don't know if the league is running it. We don't know if CEO Travell Gaines is looking at it looking at it from time to time,
or all of them.
Sammy, I agree with you. It looks like the league seems to be pushing a little bit more towards that the teams are actually controlling their own destiny when it comes to social media, and the league is going to just be releasing pressers, which in my opinion, if I were to be able to say something to Commissioner Hutton and to Travell Gaines, is I really think that there needs to be an improvement when it comes to press releases and how they're released. Now, maybe that's going to be done down the line, that they'll have their own AFL media site, because there are still a lot of questions for me too going forward, which I'm sure we'll hear about. Who's going to be the stats provider? Who's going to be doing the press releases? How are they going to get out to media? I understand a lot of the stuff is controlled by local media, but when it comes to the big announcements, it's, sure, everybody remembers the impressions for when the league announced when they were going to be launched. It was just mind-boggling how many, but they were able to use TMZ. They were able to use, who did they use? Who's the big NFL insider that they used to make one of the announcements? I'm trying to remember, but anyway, was
it Schefter?
Yes. Yeah. So to me, that's one of the things I wish that the league would do, is improve their media presence, so to speak, or their media communications.
Well, and even teams like Orlando that have a great social media presence and do things right. They spelled Thanksgiving wrong on their Happy Thanksgiving deal. I mean, it happens, and when you're on a national scale, it gets amplified. When you have people out there specifically looking for errors and wanting to find typos, it gets amplified.
Thank you.
And there are a lot of people just begging for this to fail. There's people. I know for a fact there's owners of other teams and leagues feeding fans bad information just to throw it out there on social media.
Yep.
And so you've got people actively trying to take it down, and unfortunately, and that's where the league needs to step up, and they need to make sure they've got their stuff tight.
Yes,
because there are those people who are trying to take it down, and there's some major improvements that need to be done. 100% agree.
Sammy,
Yeah,
Those are fixable. Those are easily fixable.
And they can be looked over. I think if there was no fallback from their announcements, if there was no question, like I think every announcement that they've made, we've walked away with more questions than answers. With most of their announcements, the city's announcement, where the venues were saying that they didn't have confirmations and all that, even though it couldn't have been worked out. Maybe it was in the works. But every announcement I feel like that they made, there's been more questions than answers.
Well,
Okay.
sometimes too. Or go ahead, Tim.
I know I was going to say to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I laughed at that. And I understand we have everything at our hands. All we got to do is pick up our phones and dial the arenas. Do you really think that XYZ arena is going to say, oh, yes, by the way, we do have a working relationship with the Arena Football League? I saw that and I'm like, really? Are you really that hell-bent on destroying the league or trying to destroy the league when it just really started? I understand that we still have a lot of questions. I get that. But I say let it play out. If it succeeds, it succeeds. We're all better for it. If it fails, it's going to fail. And it's true. There's always been it's like West Side Story. You get the side on the AFL, and then you have the other family of indoor football. They're always clashing, and they're always going to say different things about each other. I think, in my opinion, Commissioner Hutton has done the right thing in how he's approached it. Sure, he's brought up that which I call shenanigans, but I still think he's done the right thing. He's not really necessarily called on anybody. He's just letting them know that he knows about what is happening. Mm-hmm. And I think it's fueling. You know how they say bulletin board material? For all we know, all this garbage that has occurred, maybe bulletin board material to the AFL HQ.
Well, and I'll add to this too. If you called up Orlando's arena and said, hey, have you guys talked to the AFL about putting a team there? They're going to say no. They'll still to this day tell you no, because they haven't talked to the AFL. They have a team, and that team moved to the AFL. The league doesn't, or the arena doesn't care what league the team's in, just that the team pays the bills.
100% true.
And
thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, these teams are going to be in the contact with the arenas, not the league itself.
And I wanted to go one step further on that. When all this came about, I started digging into Colorado arenas. Obviously, like I told you guys, I'm local to Colorado. We had two teams particularly coming to Colorado, one in the National Arena League, one in the AFL. Every single arena answered the same exact way. We have no record of this contact or whatever, basically along the lines of, we have not spoken with any arena football team. Well, guess what? We have an arena football team here in Colorado from the National Arena League team, the National Arena League. So obviously that entire time, they were keeping business practices quiet, because that's what you do when you're doing business in that level, So it's just, like Tim said, it's laughable that people thought that information was just going to be readily available to anybody and everybody.
Yeah. And I'm not, by the way, Sammy, I understand your points too, dude. It's, that I'm hoping that some of the information that was originally put out didn't sway somebody all that much, that once you do see what the league is trying to do, and yes, it may be frustrating on maybe how they're doing it when it comes to the announcements, hopefully it will sway some of these people to come back or at least try the AFL. Because, you brought up a good question, Sammy. I will admit, it's just a matter of, unfortunately, today you really can't say you can't believe everything you read on the internet, because, well, you don't know these days. But it's kind of that thing that I just hope that people and I knew it wasn't going to happen, but from day one, where people would just give it a chance and let it go from there. But as you pointed out, Sammy, as you pointed out, Sam, as you pointed out, Scott, there are still questions out there now. Some of them are tied to contracts. Some of them are tied to legal stuff. We have we're currently the 22nd of January, and kickoff is in April.
April 27th.
Yeah. And I'm sure, guys, for all we know, and I think Commissioner Hutton may have mentioned, I don't know if he mentioned this on one of the most recent podcasts or whatever, but Maybe again, this is not I don't know something particular. Let the Super Bowl finish. Let NFL Network. Let's say it's NFL Network. Let NFL Network do its stuff. Day after the Super Bowl, there's the announcement.
And if it is the NFL Network, maybe it's during the Super Bowl. Maybe it's during the largest audience we're possibly going to get. That hey, come watch this on our network. I mean, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but if it does, how incredible would that be?
It's like what it's like what the UFL did. They pissed off people by doing it on Fox, but look at the traction it got, and then being on College Game Day the next day.
Yep, 100%.
So and the other thing too, sometimes things just don't work out. You think you got it down, you think you got it set, and I mentioned this before in other podcasts. We were told from the commissioner of the old AFL, 100%. Oklahoma City is moving to Seattle. And Tim knows this as well. It was done. It was happening, and it fell apart at the last minute. It just
sometimes that stuff happens. Yeah.
You had the Fort Worth Cavalry moving to Mexico City. It was in the newspaper. It never happened. You had this is going way back. You had the LA Wings going to play.
Just think about that
in LA. But because of issues with the naming rights and them basically clashing with a cycling league, if I remember correctly, they moved the team. The league forced them to move to Sacramento. So
stuff happens.
Yeah, stuff happens. I think the good thing is that they didn't announce a location and an ownership, and they've moved. That's a plus.
That's true.
We've seen, come on, guys, we've all seen things happen in indoor football. We've all seen things happen in non-traditional gridiron football. I've seen stuff
War Dogs coming along, and how are the War Dogs coming along in Columbus? I'm like,
there's another.
They've been promising that for years. Where's Bismarck? They've been promising that. They've coming back for a while.
For all the many positives, there's always a negative. But the thing is, unfortunately, everybody remembers the negative. And Scott, you and I can remember all the things that have happened.
Oh yeah,
that's true.
And some coaches still have jobs after.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, here's a good comment. Zach says, Sammy, for what it's worth on your complaint on Nike not being on the website and Assist to Score still being a partner, they did remove Assist to Score off the website now.
I can tell you this. Humble runs the website. That I do know.
That's good to know. I was not aware of that.
Humble's running the website.
Well, and I can tell you personally, Nike is very legit.
I can also confirm that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, to me is look at, and yes, it may not be what we would hope, where it was the, Russell Athletic days where they had, it was the huge announcement, Sammy, and Russell Athletic was going to be this. Right. Even if they're partnering with Nike through this other company, it's still Nike that's being the official on-field shoes and whatever merchandise for players on field.
I wish they'd bring No Fear back, but
Oh God, there's going back. Holy crap, No Fear, man.
Well, even if they are a small company and they do bring Assist to Score on, I would not be against the AFL bringing in Assist to Score. I have no issue with whatever the AFL does. My only niche against it is just misleading. Because it's unnecessary. At the end of the day, it's unnecessary. It's the AFL. We're gonna watch it, and they're gonna bring. And it looks like they're bringing in good talent. So they sell themselves basically.
It's a brand name. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I agree with you, and I'll let everybody know this. And I think I mentioned this to you, Sammy, specifically in our chat and whatnot. When it comes to anything, when it comes to ArenaFan, and Scott's learned this too from the years he's done this also. Usually, if we learn something, we need to vet it. We're not going to just put it out. We're just not going to put it out there just to be the first to get it out there. I've heard stuff. I've reached out to try to get verification or whatever to put it out, and I don't. So it doesn't go out there. When it came to the Nike thing, with 100% certainty, I can say it's true. How it was written was true. It wasn't a mislead. It was Nike is going to be this. This other company will do the uniforms. That's exactly, unless the T's don't get crossed, but that's my understanding that these two, I think it's is it BSN Sports? Help me here, guys.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, the BSN and Nike, what we put out on social is true. But I get your point, Sammy. Though I get your point.
Mm-hmm.
You basically you're going back to what has happened in the past, and it just is building up. I get it. I completely get it.
100%. And see, that's the frustrating part about this whole thing. And I think Scott said it, is the league could shut a lot of this down if they just cleaned up how they operate some of the things they do. And that is no disrespect to the league, because I just want to see them succeed. But I think some of it, like Tim said, it is somewhat intentional. They're okay with some negative attention if it means they're constantly getting attention. Because at the end of the day, all that's going to build up to everybody watching week 1 when the AFL kicks off to see if it's a colossal failure or it's a colossal success. And regardless of if they're watching hoping those teams fail or the league folds or there's just a blank screen when it's supposed to kick off or whatever, they're still watching. So that's all that really matters at the end of the day. So I think that's one of the tough things about this is it's frustrating because we all want the information that's been talked about, discussed, or whatever. But at the end of the day, they're not going to put it out until they're 100% ready, and some of that might be, like I said, intentional. To keep us waiting. Because at the end of the day, it keeps us talking.
And I feel for the fans. Oh, go ahead. What's that?
Yeah, I do want. If they want to be patient, I do want them to be patient. I think, Sam, I think you were one of the people that critiqued how late the team names were initially, whenever after the cities were. And I said, we should wait. That's probably lingering out throughout the kickoff to keep their name constantly in the news. Mm-hmm. And they ended up just. I feel like it wasn't. It was all more clustered with the expansion teams than it was with like the CIF teams joining in and the pre-existing teams. But they cluttered mostly the expansion teams up. But if that's what it takes to drag it out, I would rather them drag it out than release misinformation or release something that falls out at the end of the day. So that's how I feel about that whole situation.
Yeah, and as I said, basically what I was going to say is I feel for the fans in Chicago and St. Louis and Ohio that were wanting a team, expecting a team, and got excited for it, and it didn't happen. I feel for them. But if you look at where most of the people are from that do the largest amount of complaining, they're from non-AFL cities. They're from possibly even cities that have other leagues. Often that's the case. But the Chicago fans are complaining. The St. Louis folks are complaining. All the different Ohio areas are complaining, and rightfully so. They were expecting this. But ultimately, I hate to say it, but does it matter? We don't have a team there. And this league's going to happen without those markets. Hopefully next year we're in there. Do I see all these teams making it into 2025? No, I don't. To be 100% honest. We're going to lose 2, 3, maybe even 4. Mm-hmm. But we're going to pick up. We're going to pick up.
Perfect time to bring this up.
And that's where I was going with that. Is Pimmel's comment in there?
Yeah. So.
If you look at that old IFL list, it looks nothing like today.
I was about to say, has anybody checked out the historical team pages at ArenaFan lately?
And that's the part that gets me is it seems like the level of hate that's coming at the AFL is so much more intense than anything that ever got directed at other leagues. I mean, we watched one of the ugliest situations I've ever experienced in arena football unfold with the Albany Empire last season. Mm-hmm. Just one of the most publicly bizarre situations from start to finish that I've ever seen. And yet the level of hate that the AFL has gotten seems to be, to me, just a whole other stratosphere for what they've done wrong. You know, I mean, like, you look at it, and technically we haven't even played a game yet. We haven't failed to pay a player a check. We haven't had a team fold. You know, none of this has happened yet, and yet here everybody is bashing the league like they've already done all this stuff wrong. When in reality, what do we boil down to?
Or like they've seen the business plan.
Yeah, it's a lack of information. That's what everybody's upset about. A lack of information is really what it boils down to.
You know, and to even go a step further with what Pim was saying, if you compare just same years, 2010 to 2019, the IFL lost more teams than the AFL did. You know, after that, it changes. AFL's gone, IFL moves on, but during those years, the IFL lost more teams than the AFL did.
Well, I think you could go at any 14-year standpoint and go pick any league in the arena.
Mm-hmm.
And they all lose teams. They all pick up teams. It's like that with every league.
But yet the IFL gets considered stable.
The IFL, though, since I think 2020, though, they've only lost 2 or 3 teams that have played games. If you count Bismarck, and I believe Cedar Rapids and Louisville, then I believe that's it. So as far as
Columbus,
Spokane. I mean, I wouldn't count Columbus since they didn't play a game.
Yeah,
but
true. It's fair.
And Spokane technically left the league. I don't know if it's willingly or what happened with this exact situation. I forget that story. But I mean, you have one hand of teams that, you know, don't exist anymore in the last 4 or 5 years, which is phenomenal. In my opinion, for Arena, that's phenomenal. To have that many consistent teams, it's definitely one of the standards of the Arena game. The NAL, a lot of people didn't like Omaha and some of the CIF teams joining the NAL, but one thing that they forget is Sioux City and Omaha are 2 staples and have been around. They can figure out the finances. They're going to be stable in the league, and that's what the NAL at the time needed, because they had, that year before, they lost half their league, either folding or they left. So
those teams also hopped around like LeBron James too. So
yeah.
I was waiting for the announcement. What city are you going to be in this year?
But no, it's true. Those are very as a franchise, as a continuing operating team. Yeah, Sioux City and Omaha, they've got it. I mean, they've got some great histories for sure.
I don't think anybody would argue that either, you know, and that's one of the things that I think some of this information that came out about, you know, the AFL pursuing a team like Jacksonville, a team like San Antonio, you know, all these different franchises. Of course they did. It made sense. All these franchises are extremely stable. Their ownership groups are top notch. They're some of the best in arena football, indoor football, regardless of league. So of course they pursued all these teams. You know, did these teams also, you know, vet their other options? Absolutely they did. And can anybody blame them for going with the IFL, with the San Antonio and the Jacksonville situation? When you look at it from a business perspective, a very smart man once pointed it out to me like this. My sponsors don't have any idea what the difference between the National Arena League is, the Indoor Football League, or the Arena Football League. They have no clue. So all I can do is sell them on the amount of people that I can put them in front of, which my arena only holds so many people. So at that point, what does it matter what league I play in? And you know, know
what though? But I will say in the AFL, it does matter.
It does to a certain extent
because of the additional exposure you potentially have compared to those other leagues when it comes to TV contracts.
No, you're 100% correct on that. But I mean,
that would be the exception to that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why they brought back the USFL brand. That's why they brought back the XFL brand.
That's true.
It's recognition.
It's true.
You know, good or bad. You know, throughout the history, good or bad. You know,
no one ever stopped talking about the XFL. No. You know, from 2001 on, no one ever stopped talking about the XFL. So bringing that back made sense.
That's true.
The AFL's the same market. There's a reason why there was an auction for all the AFL properties, because the brand itself has a lot of value. There's a reason the Arena League is named the Arena League. They're trying to capitalize on Arena Football League.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the indoor league, it's the Arena League. And there's a lot of value in the brand name. Now what you do with it is what you do with it.
Well, do you guys have any final thoughts for tonight's show as far as all this goes? I mean, I'm excited for the league, but I'm excited for the teams. I don't know how much this has definitely opened my eyes to more of the setup of the league, money wise, financially wise. Still question on where the money for the field jerseys that they're going to redo, that type of stuff. But as far as trust in the league, I'll hold off opinion more as we get closer to kickoff and wait till kickoff to form a full opinion on it. As far as that goes,
like Tim and Scott said, I think we're going to start getting news on a much quicker basis here very soon. Like they said, timing just didn't make sense to this point, and especially with some of their broadcast partners. So I think some of that clears itself up here in the next month or so, and we'll start getting a lot more news.
You brought up Zoe's question, by the way. Bring it up again. See if we can see if anybody has any thoughts on that. One about single entity. I don't think the league was ever technically single entity. Yes, I think the contracts are signed with the Arena Football League, but the pay is done through the teams. Yes. So I think if the league was footing the bill for all the salaries, then I would say single entity. But each, everybody goes back to what it was, the original MLS model. That was single entity. A lot of people still call today MLS a single entity. But I think when you actually have an owner, not somebody who is running a team, then I can't consider a league being single entity.
Yeah, the XFL is single entity.
Yes.
The XFL owned everything. They had guys running each individual team.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, each owner is going to have a vote. So, this is definitely just a franchise.
It is 100% a franchise situation. So, here's a really good question. And if you guys don't mind, I'll go ahead and take this one. The teams are 100% safe. Yes, you do not have to concern yourself with that. I think, if the league ever failed, you just see a mad scramble for these teams to find their next destination. I really think that we don't have any concerns whatsoever about certain teams that are sticking around. You can pretty much pick off the top of your head which ones will be here in 2025 regardless of the league. I think it's as simple as that.
If the league were to fail mid-season, which I can tell you right now it won't. These business partners they have would not have got involved if that was going to happen. But if that were to happen, there's going to be some issues. But again, you play, one game of AFL pay is worth 5 games of IFL pay. So play 4 games, you're already way ahead. The players are going to be taken care of.
That's fair. That's a good point.
At least, guys, now we can actually say for sure that it looks like the Philadelphia Soul are not a road team.
There's something new?
No, because they do have a home game scheduled.
There was one home game scheduled.
Yeah,
on the Nashville schedule, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the commissioner said they will be playing in the Philadelphia area.
See, that's the other thing I wanted to bring up too is you look at some of these franchises that aren't playing this year. The rumors of where they were going to be, obviously, yes, I would have loved all Arena Football League historians would have loved to have been able to be in Rockford for that very first game because, if that had occurred, their very first game on April 27th, we're talking the 38th anniversary of the actual test game. I mean, come on, you can't script it any better than that. But I think when it comes to the Philadelphia location, when it comes to some of these other locations, you really can't call yourself the Chicago Rush if you don't play. And I understand they're suburbs. Some are in suburbs and stuff like that.
That's a very extended suburb.
Yeah, but it's like Philadelphia. If they were to play, yes, we would love for Atlantic City to come back. By the way, speaking of, today is the actual anniversary of when Atlantic City was supposed to get a team, when they were named that they were going to get a team. But you want to be. Yes, you could play in Trenton. You can play in Atlantic City. You can play elsewhere. You can play Lehigh Valley, but you want it to be a home team, and maybe that's what the case is here. It's some of the places where some of the teams are going to play. It was like, you're not really. I'll say the Philadelphia Soul. Weren't going to be really the Chicago Rush. I think they want to get it right the first time. And I think some of these teams like Chicago who want to wait a year, it makes a ton of sense, especially if they can go ahead and get one of the local arena, one of the closer arenas to the Chicago area.
And I could see Philly landing in a place like Trenton. To me, Trenton's close enough. I'm not from Philly. I don't know. Maybe it's not, but I feel like Trenton's close enough. Atlantic City seems like a bit of a stretch. Like you think of Atlantic City as its own independent place. Most of the country doesn't think of Trenton as its own independent place. They don't think of Trenton, period. And if you told them where it was, they go, "Oh, that's Philadelphia." I've lived in Kansas City for 20 years now, but I've lived in Raytown, I've lived in Independence, and it's Kansas City. Overland Park, it's Kansas City. So,
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was to say, and then you look at the Giants and Jets. They play in New Jersey.
Niners.
Thank you. That was exactly where I was going with it.
Niners play in San Jose, essentially.
Yeah. Exactly. So, like you never hear those complaints about the NFL teams. Mm-hmm. Never. And when have they ever played in New York? I'm not an NFL historian, but
sure, the Jets played in Queens when they were at Shea.
So didn't the Polo Grounds host some games at one point?
Yeah.
I think we shared the stadium with the Yankees a long time ago.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
yeah, to me, like I said, Trenton, okay. I could see that, but yeah, like Atlantic City, that's pushing it.
I think it would be a coup. I think it would be a coup if Philadelphia ends up literally within the Philadelphia greater area.
Yeah,
there's a lot of cities within Philadelphia too, like a lot of big cities, like DC, Baltimore. You have a lot of big cities within an hour and a half away too. So it's not like that they're hard pressed for arenas in that location. I know Baltimore, I don't think has one because Royal Farms said they wouldn't host another arena team, but
apparently Philadelphia proper, there is a shortage of arenas. According to the commissioner, there's not a lot of
there's
football arenas in the Philadelphia area.
There's like two.
Yeah.
If you really look at it, there's Wells Fargo, and then there's the one in Trenton. Wells Fargo, there's a reason why every major sports team plays there. I mean, in Philadelphia, quite honestly. So,
how big is Temple's basketball arena?
Temple's out, he said.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah. Really? Straight up out.
That's a good point.
That was one of the ones they were looking at, but he's like, no, that can't happen.
Could be the same situation with Arizona, as far as we know. Awesome. That was an interesting twist I will make, guys, when we saw that the Rattlers are moving to Glendale.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Then it came out just at the right. Yeah, that was too strategic. I'm sorry. So I know you're trying to wrap it up, Sammy. I know Tim and I have gone on for hours and hours before on these things. So
I'm good whenever you guys are.
Yeah, I just want to say, I know we're able to simulcast tonight on multiple channels. I want to thank everybody for showing up, obviously, because it's not something that we at ArenaFan have normally done, but I think it gives. To give an example, Scott and I, we've not always been the best of friends. We used to do this. You
and I have gotten along pretty well. I don't know what the rest of the staff.
Yeah, and it's because we were on rival sites. Yes, we had ArenaFan had the pedigree. Scott came along. He was giving another side of it. I think this is able, Sammy and Sam, to bring everybody together. We're all part of the Arena Football family. We're all able to cover the league. It doesn't necessarily mean, Sam's done an X amount of interviews. Doesn't mean that Scott can't or I can't have a type of show, a weekly show. Can you think about what it's going to be like, guys, if we all do weekly shows during the year?
It's gonna be crazy.
It's just the amount of positive content for the league.
Exactly.
Positive content for this league, and it's, I'm glad Scott and I can call Scott my friend now, because as I said, it's like what's happening with the indoor leagues. It's like I wish we could just all get along. I just wish we could all get along. And Sammy, I hope for you we've been able to convince you a little bit more that, yes, there are. We'll agree there are questions still. We hope that they do get answered. Super Bowl is 3 weeks away, something like that. So I'm just glad we were able to get this out, and maybe more roundtables to come. So I mean, as I said, but I had fun, guys, and I'm looking forward to 2024. That's all I can say. I've started off as a optimistic, but I'm a little bit more there now. I'm looking forward to 2024.
And I've got to throw in the shameless plug. I'll be back online tomorrow night with the Rampage owners. They say they've got 2 big announcements. I genuinely don't know what it is. I'm assuming it's the head coach, but it could be anything. So yeah, tomorrow night on all of our socials, we'll be multi-broadcasting. So if you're interested in hearing what's going on in Iowa, definitely tune in tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Central.
Real quick, Ducon, I wanted to make sure I pointed this out. This was not my idea. I actually just found out about this last night. I was invited by Sammy. Thank you, Sammy, for letting me be a part of this. I appreciate this greatly. I've been looking forward to working with Tim and Scott for a long time. I know you and I have already done a show together, but always a pleasure to work with you as well. So I appreciate you bringing us all together for this. It was a great time. I learned some stuff that I was not aware of. So always fun to learn some more stuff. And, it's been a pleasure speaking with you guys. I look forward to the next episode for sure.
Well, thank you all. Really appreciate the opportunity. It's been a good time tonight.
And obviously, whenever we're on each other's socials, we got to give ourselves our own plug. Sammy, where can everybody find you on social media?
I'm mostly on Facebook. I think we have a Twitter and a YouTube, or X. I'm sorry, X Pro Arena Talk, YouTube or Pro Arena Talk, and most active on Facebook. We'll be definitely doing some shows throughout the year. On not just arena football, AFL, but we're going to cover all the major arena leagues like the NAL, AIF, IFL. I'm excited for this year, man. There's a lot of football to be played, and there's a lot of football to watch. So I'm excited for this whole season, not just AFL.
It's going to be a good time.
Slasher?
I mean, we're everywhere. I think the only place we're not on is TikTok. But yeah, AFL Fan Zone. The website itself is AFLFanZone.net as well as UFLFanZone.net. Working on definitely getting that brand built up as well. YouTube, Facebook, X, Twitch. You can catch us on Twitch. Fan Zone Network on Twitch. But yeah, just hop on, sign up for notifications. You'll get it when we go live.
You can find me over, personally over at on X at Repacked. You can find us over at ArenaFan. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. And we did mention it before, but we're talking about different shows during the year. We are planning on bringing back in some capacity AFL Rewind, our weekly show, and doing a little bit more live stuff. This is the live stuff is brand new to me, so I'm happy to get into it. So, but
it's been a lot of fun so far this year.
Yeah, follow us follow ArenaFan on socials, wherever you can find us.
Definitely. Hopefully you guys all know by now, but Shady Sports Network, we're basically on every major platform except for TikTok, ironically as well. Have not gotten to that point, but appreciate everybody who tuned in tonight. There was a lot of people here, a lot of bigger names in the arena football world. So definitely appreciate you guys all tuning in. If you haven't done so already, make sure you follow all of these guys on their major social media platforms, YouTube, all of that. Hopefully we get to do this again. But either way, there's going to be a lot of good coverage coming this season. So make sure you tune into all of these. And I just wanted to leave you guys with one quick meme before we get out of here.
Hey, you even got a picture of me in there.